and welcome to Enquire to Choir. My name is Eva and I'm here to help you, fellow choir people. Welcome! It's been a few weeks, I know, I'm sorry, but I'm back. And this is the first autumn edition. It's been a few very rainy days here in Croatia. In today's video, we're talking about the choir myths. Things that are often given as advice, as good words ahead for directing a choir, that in my experience turned out not to be true. As you know, here on the channel we mostly talk about amateur choirs and amateur choir directing. If you're a professional, I think some of these could be true for you as well, because singers are people and choirs are for themselves, you know, they're all specific organisms. So I think some of the myths you will find also to be true. The reason why I'm doing this video is just to let you know that if you're feeling that something is really strange, you're not the only one. Some things are generally true and some myths are generally myths when it comes to choir directing. There are 8 of them in the video, so let's start with the video. First myth, my favorite: more singers, better choir. I strongly disagree with this one. It really turned out not to be true. Not in every case. In most cases, more singers bring more problems. I understand where this myth comes from. It comes from a very strong fact. If you have more singers, then the choir can produce a stronger sound, a louder sound. The power it has could be stronger. The variety of singers you have in the choir can produce a better repertoire. And if you have more singers, the better the chances that you have more capabilities as a choir, because more people know more. That is true. But in my experience, it turned out that if you have a strong choir, a smaller choir where everything is working and more singers come, the structure of the choir could be broken. In the best case scenario, more singers and becoming a bigger choir will take time to settle, and the choir to become a functioning group of people again that can sing really strongly. I should mention that my biggest philosophy in life is quality over quantity, so maybe I'm the wrong person to ask how to have a big choir. I do work with a big choir and I know from experience that, you know, you think that more singers will cover up some insecurities, and of course, if you have more singers, then you are safer when it comes to performances, because if somebody doesn't come to the performance, there are other singers and there is a greater number of them, so you're better covered. But sometimes it turned out for me that having more people in the choir makes for a worse sound, because if you have more singers but they're not singing as well as the few specific ones you manage to train, then the choir sound is disrupted. I'm just saying that it's not a given. It's not a given that if you have a bigger choir that you're going to have a better choir. And often I see that people solve their problems by getting more singers. Getting more singers is a good thing, but at a specific moment when you're ready for it, when you have the time to include them in the choir. Also, just because you know how to work with a smaller choir doesn't mean that you have the experience to work with a bigger choir. So that's something to take into account when you're thinking about getting a bigger choir. Myth number 2, a really lovely one. Your biggest choir discussions with your choir as a choir director will be about music. If you have ever worked with a choir and you are heading for a performance, what was the biggest discussion you ever had? And in my experience, that discussion repeats itself no matter how many times we discussed it and we solved the problem and we decided on certain things. It always repeats. The biggest discussion is always about clothes. What we have to wear, what the choir singers have to wear, what combination of the uniform they have to wear, and if they have have a uniform, what about the other stuff? You know, the shoes, the covers, the microphones, the hats, the hairstyle. Every single time there is a certain discussion, no matter how many times we have discussed it, no matter how many times we set the rules. Every time there is a discussion, and every time when we come to the performance, somebody didn't follow the rules. It turned out that I have to really take my time to discuss certain things with my choir. It's not about music. And it took me a few seasons to realize that it's not just that choir, and it's not just because we are at the beginning stage. It's every choir, every ensemble, in any point of the choir season, there will be a discussion which takes a lot of time and energy, and it's really not about music. So I made my peace with that, and the myth is something I wanted to mention. This is a really warning one. Once you reach your good place with a choir, it will get easier. I'm talking about you have a choir and you're working with them to set certain things in place. So to get them to sing better, the pitch gets better, the synchronicity is developed, and you develop a very good choir. Yes, it is true, some things get easier when you get to that place because they have their routines set. You don't have to repeat all of the same things, and they know the behavior of a choir rehearsal. Your behavior as a choir director, your inputs are understood better. That's all true, but that state doesn't stay permanent. You get new singers, some singers leave, the energy shifts. Sometimes they get tired, that circumstances change. You change the venue, change the plan, change the goal. But in general, when you reach a good place with your choir, then you realize that you have to set new behaviors that are more detailed, more advanced. And for you to get to that place, you as a choir director have to know more things than you had to know before. Because once you get to that good place where you don't have to repeat all of the basic stuff, then you have to get new education to find new ways for the choir to progress. So once you reach a good state with your choir will desire to move forward with the progress they're already having. They will not want to stay at that good place. They will want to, again, become better. And you as the choir director have to get new mechanisms and new knowledge and new skills for the choir to get to an even better place. Just know that you will always have new challenges, because even if you know all of the songs and the repertoire is well rehearsed, then in the best case scenario, the choir will get bored and you will have to reach out for new music and new motivation. It's always a river, never a lake, okay? It always flows. Just be prepared for the fact that you will never reach a state when everything is cool and it will stay that way. That never happens. You always have to move forward in some way or another. We talked a lot about this on the channel, but it's always true that the myth exists. Your choir directing authority will be understood. That's a myth. And if you have ever stood in front of a choir, I think you know that. The amount of times that somebody from the choir is going to question you in the middle of rehearsal. So you say something, an input, and somebody says, without even raising their hand, they will say, is that really the best way? Why don't we do this? Why are you not working like this? We should do it like that. The previous choir director did it like this. Your authority is something that you have to earn, and that you have to show to your choir that you know how to handle. Getting the respect and the authority is something that is a process, and you have to be aware of that. If they're questioning you, if you're thinking, why is that happening to me? I'm the choir director. Isn't the whole point of my job to be listened to? You're not alone. You're just under the influence of a myth. Myth number 5 is probably not the most comfortable one, but I wanted to say it. Choir management will always be in agreement with you. That is a myth in my case, in my experience. Listen, You have your choir management and you have yourself as a choir director. It is really logical to assume that the choir management will always have your back. They don't have to always agree with you, but the communication is agreed upon. So you suppose that they will communicate everything with you and they will take your opinion into consideration and your availability and your authority. That's not always the case. You don't always have the best people in the choir management. You don't always have capable people in the choir management when it comes to management. Sometimes the people in the management don't realize that they can't do something without your input, that they don't know better. Sometimes it still happens to me with my managements that I know really well, that they decide something without even thinking about me because they just forgot. So then I have to say, listen, whatever the intention, whatever the motivation, or whatever the situation between your choir management and yourself is, just know that for any reason it could be that you will not always be in agreement with them. That's not the end of the world. That doesn't mean they're against you. That doesn't mean you're not right for the job or you're not in authority when it comes to your choir. It's just something that you have to realize is a myth. When it comes to your singers, especially if they're amateur singers, you're probably really aware of this one. If you know which voice your singer is, then you can count on the vocal range they have. If you have a singer that was not trained, that can sing in tune, but the voice is not developed. If they are an older singer, not a very young one. If they have started going to a choir without having any previous experience, that means that their voice is unknown territory, even for them. Just because the color, the timbre of the sound is an alto for that singer at an audition, it doesn't mean that they're truly an alto that can sing the vocal range of a theoretically alto. Amateur singers are very different. So the literature when it comes to the vocal range should be taken as guidance, not as a rule. Oh, I love this one, and I really think there's a video coming about this. The biggest motivation for staying in a choir as a singer is wanting to sing and wanting to sing in a choir and loving music. Most people, especially in theory, for amateur choirs, they think that's the biggest motivation. Somebody loves being in a choir, somebody loves music, somebody loves singing, and that's the biggest motivation. So anything else, when it comes to the social aspect of a choir, doesn't matter. And you as a choir director can do anything and everything because their motivation is to sing in a choir. So I can do anything because I'm the choir director. Not true. Especially when it comes to amateur choirs. The biggest motivation to stay in a choir is, in my experience, something really unrelated to music. Of course, people who want to sing in a choir will sing in a choir, but will that choir be yours or someone else's, someplace else? That's where the motivation changes, okay? Just because someone wants to sing in a choir doesn't mean they will want to stay in your choir. You have to think about the motivation people have. The biggest motivation for staying in your choir is the people in the choir and the way the atmosphere is, the energy of the room. Are they happy? Are they sad? Do they like their repertoire? Do they like the people who sit next to them? Is the choir rehearsal space close to them? In general, does the choir conform to their lifestyle? Do they have obligations? Do they have the family responsibilities? I mean, it's not set in stone. Just because someone has a big motivation to sing in a choir doesn't mean they will stay. I've had people who really wanted to stay in the choir, but they realized that they don't have the time or the energy because of their jobs, because of their obligations. So they took a break and tried to fit the choir in some other way, and sometimes they succeed, sometimes they don't. But please know that just because somebody likes singing in a choir doesn't mean they will necessarily like singing in yours. So the motivation for singing in an amateur choir, taking the time out of everything, is something you have to think more thoroughly about. Adding to that, just because somebody entered your choir and decided they will make the effort, they will make it an obligation in their life, doesn't mean they are set in stone as well. Things happen, life happens. They're not paid to be there. They're not, under any contract. It is understood that you as a choir director should be able to count on them. But again, it's not a given. So the motivation is something you have to consider. It's not so simple, and things are not black and white. And finally, what myths are all about. It is going to be like they say it will be. I talk about this a lot on the channel, that literature and the knowledge I got from the Academy of Music, from people who actually know choirs. Most of the things they said, they taught me, didn't turn out to be true for one or more of my choirs. And that is a very natural thing. You can talk about things in theory, you can talk about professional choirs, but amateur choirs are different. Every choir is different. And even what I say here on the channel, even I say things that for you may not be true. And you may be thinking, how is that true for Eva and it's not true for me? Or Eva said it's going to be this way and it didn't turn out like that. That's normal. I don't know your choir. Every person is different. Every choir is different. Every combination of people is different. Every repertoire is different. Every circumstance is different. You are different than I am. You can handle some things better and easier than I. The literature can't conform to every choir director, every situation. We have 80 plus videos here on the channel that try to cover the psychology of a choir, and I will still be making videos until I'm 100 years old. So just know that if you try a certain way because the input from the literature or from this channel or from your mentors or from your choir singer's perspective doesn't work, it doesn't mean there is a problem with you. It just means that your choir is different and needs a different approach. Know that and believe in yourself, and everything will be okay. You will do great. And yeah, I suppose that's it. Okay, so are you feeling relieved with some of the things I said? I hope this video was helpful. I think it is a good video to start the new choir season with. I just wanted to say a few things. There are many emails and many messages I haven't yet replied to. I will. You send so thoughtful emails and interesting questions, and I work a lot, so I need a lot of time to think about certain things. I don't want to give the answers just, oh, this is like that. I want to think about them. So just know that I will reply. That said, I am getting back to videos. Okay, this is a new season, but I wanted to say that I will be more present at Facebook. Okay, I've totally neglected the Facebook page. I know that. I'm a very bad person for doing that, but you have to understand that Facebook in Croatia, it's not a social network that is very effective, but it turned out that for this channel, Facebook is something that works really well, and I've neglected it for years, and I will try. I hope I get better at it, and I hope to get better communication with all of you. You have to know that it's a surprise for me that this channel attracts so many thoughtful conversations. You are a fabulous audience, and I want to make things happen for you in a way that can be effective. So if you're on Facebook, you can like Enquire to Choir and things will get better there. I promise. If you don't have Facebook, if you want to stay in touch with me, you can email me. I will reply eventually. And if you wish to see more from Enquire to Choir, you can subscribe. People often ask me what they can do to support the channel. You can subscribe and you can tell other people about the channel. You can't buy anything. Okay, so that's enough talk. Back to business. I hope you have a great choir season. I hope things are normal when it comes to everything that has been happening for the past years. I hope you're doing okay, and I will be here to support you in ways that I can. Conduct well, conductors, and I'll see you next time. Bye!